The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Reproaction's Act and Learn webinar for the month of June 2021. Today's topic is a very important one. Big pro-life deep dive. Who is Operation Save America? So first, we'll introduce your host from Team Reproaction. First, this is Erin Matson you're hearing. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Executive Director of Reproaction, an organization I co-founded with Pamela Merritt. I am based in Washington, D.C., and I invite you to follow me on Twitter at Erin to the Max.
And my name is Kara Mailman. My pronouns are they, them. I am the Senior Research Analyst here at Reproaction, based out of Arlington, Virginia. And y'all are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter at Kara Mailman.
Great. So let me roll through the agenda and then we'll dive right in. First, we'll introduce Reproaction. Then we'll have Operation Save America explained. And I'm really excited, and I know you'll all learn so much from Kara. Then we're very excited about our panelist for today, who is Kat Green, Managing Director of Abortion Access Front and an expert on Operation Save America. So we'll have a spirited discussion. Then we'll go through next steps and close up with Q&A. So a bit of housekeeping. One, if you are someone who likes to live tweet, you're more than welcome to do so. You can use the hashtag Reproaction. And then for Q&A, so the way that will work is we will get to as many questions as possible that we have time for that you put into the questions tab. So there is no need to wait for the end to put in your questions. If you think of a question, just put it in that questions tab and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. So first, I'll introduce Reproaction. So Reproaction leads bold action to increase access to abortion and advance reproductive justice. We are fiercely proud of our left flank analysis, and we are known for our willingness to hold folks on all sides of the issues that we work on accountable, whether they're traditionally considered allies or opposition. And we also have a commitment to nonviolent direct action as one of the key tools in our toolbox. And with that, I will pass it to Kara.
Thank you, Erin. And just before I start, I'm going to ask you all to bear with me as I have a bit of a cold, so there might be a bit of coughing on my end. So before we dive into their beliefs, I do want to give all of you a brief history of Operation Save America. Operation Save America was originally founded in 1986 by Randall Terry under the name Operation Rescue or Operation Rescue National. At the time, Operation Rescue included leaders of what is now known as the Red Rose Rescue Movement, in which anti-abortion activists either obstruct clinic entrances or physically enter clinics and distribute anti-abortion literature and red roses to patients until they are forcibly removed from the clinic by police. In the 1990s, members of Operation Rescue held what they refer to as the Summer of Mercy in Wichita, Kansas, which involved a number of protests and so-called Red Rose rescues that were largely focused on George Tiller's clinic and resulted in the arrests of over 1,600 anti-abortion activists. Under Director Flip Benham, the organization became Operation Save America. Just as a little bit of extra information, there is another organization known as Operation Rescue that is split off from what we know as Operation Save America. The current director, Rusty Thomas, rose to power in 2014 after serving as the assistant director to Flip Benham. And at their June 2021 conference, so in about 2 weeks, their current assistant director, Jason Storms, will take over as the director of Operation Save America. Next slide. Thank you. So now I'm going to hit on the key beliefs of Operation Save America. And here I outlined them as bullet points. So these beliefs are: abortion is murder and should be abolished. LGBTQ people are sinful, confused, and/or immoral. Muslims are evil and Islam should be eradicated. And the right to bear arms to the extreme. So the first belief we're going to touch on is abortion is murder and should be abolished. When Operation Save America was founded, its founder, Randall Terry, said, "If you believe abortion is murder, then you must act like it's murder." So this organization was literally founded on the belief that abortion should be treated as homicide. An associate of Operation Save America named Jeff Durbin, who is also a pastor at Apologia Church, where a number of their events are held out in Arizona, stated at one of their recent conferences that the criminalization of abortion is pro-life. Unfortunately, the anti-abortion activists with Operation Save America have also managed to get state representatives and senators on their side, including Arizona State Rep Walt Blackman, who represents the town of Snowflake. And at one of the recent Operation Save America conferences, he was discussing a bill of abortion abolition that he introduced. And he said of the bill, "Yes, I am giving you a choice. I'm giving you a choice to stop murdering your babies or face the consequences." Again, directly telling people who have abortions that they should be charged with murder. And finally, this is an excerpt from one of our Reproaction videos from our Stop Prosecuting Abortion campaign, where associates with Operation Save America said, "Abortion is just as punishable by death as any other murder, and that they, meaning people who have abortions, should be executed." Excuse me. Next slide, please. So next, the belief that LGBTQ people are sinful, confused, or evil. Excuse me. At their recent conference, they featured a man named George Grant. George Grant has, in written word in one of his books, openly lamented that LGBTQ people can no longer be executed for their sexuality. They have stated that homosexuality is running rampant to defile and pollute our nation. They have called being gay a national sin. They claim that trans people are denying science. And they have openly stated that they believe providing affirmation and gender affirming care for trans youth is a form of child abuse. So up next are their anti-Islam beliefs. These were a part of the founding of Operation Save America, and they picked up around 9/11. They have referred to Islam as a monstrous religion, and they directly blame all Muslims for the events of 9/11. They have gone and physically protested mosques, both around the site of 9/11 and across the country. They have claimed that Islam as a whole takes a life and enslaves it. They have said that Islam and Christianity cannot peacefully coexist. They are at war. They claim that Jesus hates Muslims despite biblical God allegedly loving everyone, and claim that Islam is another murderous cover-up for the devil. And it's interesting because in some literature, they're described as specifically going to towns where there are both like a large number of mosques and abortion clinics so that they can protest both. So they try to target both at once to tie in what they believe are these two evils. Next slide, please. And finally, we're going to talk about the right to bear arms to the extreme. And I've included these two Facebook posts from incoming Operation Save America director Jason Storms, as he has been one of the leading voices of this view within Operation Save America. So I'm going to read both of these posts out loud. The one on the left, it's a picture of Jason Storms, his two daughters dressed to go to prom, and their children, and their friends. It's captioned, "Taking the kids and their friends to the prom, #tactical dad, #tactical teens." Storms, his daughters, and their friends are all carrying weapons. Two of them, at least, are carrying assault weapons. And if I had to take a guess based on some of Jason Storm's past rhetoric, including his statements that he has wandered the streets of Wisconsin with his AR-15 across his back. I would say those might be AR-15s. Don't necessarily seem like appropriate prom attire, but here we are. Additionally, on April, sorry, could you go back please, Erin? Thank you. Additionally, on April 15th, Jason Storms posted the following. Our founding fathers gave us a vaccine to protect against the spread of tyranny. It involves the careful administration of a lead injection, which can be housed in various calibers. Typically, one injection is adequate to cure anyone infected with a tyrannical spirit. Excuse me. But for severe cases, multiple injections may be required. If you do not have the tools or training to administer such a vaccine, I would strongly encourage you to acquire them ASAP. The infectious disease of tyranny is spreading rapidly in our nation, and the hashtags are be safe and vaccinate the government. So in this Facebook post, Jason Storms is effectively encouraging his followers to shoot government officials who they believe are tyrannical. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to touch on some of the key players associated with Operation Save America, starting with current OSA Director Rusty Thomas. I've tried to include a couple of what I call fun facts in this presentation because this is a very heavy topic. Excuse me. So my fun fact about Rusty Thomas is that he is a former actor, which becomes very apparent anytime you listen to him give a speech, as he will alternate between random yelling and fake crying. Rusty Thomas is located in Waco, Texas. He has 13 children across 2 marriages. And while there is a lot that Rusty has said and done that is disturbing, one of the most disturbing things to me personally is that he has used his son Jeremiah's bone cancer and eventual death to campaign for the criminalization of abortion. He was able to get Jeremiah, who again at the time was dying of an aggressive form of bone cancer, an interview with Texas Governor Greg Abbott, in which Greg Abbott told Jeremiah that his wish, which was that Texas would treat abortion like an act of murder, would be granted. This campaign around Jeremiah's death is still currently active on Operation Save America's website. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to touch a little more on Jason Storms, the current Assistant Director and incoming Director of Operation Save America. He is a father of 9 based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. When he was 18, he told his then girlfriend to get an abortion and then never spoke to her again. He was one of a number of Operation Save America associates present at the white supremacist insurrection at the US Capitol on January 6th, really demonstrating that anti-abortion activism upholds the goals of white supremacy. He called accused pedophile Roy Moore, who was present at OSA's May conference, one of his heroes. And you've seen a sample of his Facebook posts, which are a combination of violent anti-abortion rhetoric, anti-trans rhetoric, COVID-19 conspiracy theories, and gun enthusiast content. Next slide, please. So the last key player we have is Darren Stidd, who is a pastor at Harmony Baptist Church and the incoming assistant director of OSA starting in June. He's a father of 8 based near Frankfort, Indiana, and while there's not a whole lot on the internet about Darren Stidd, one thing that is very clear is that Stidd loves essential oils. He currently works for a multi-level marketing company called Young Living, selling essential oils, and has written multiple books on the topic of religion and essential oils. Next slide, please. A few other notable OSA players For context, OSA only has two official titles up on their website. So a number of these people are either current or previous associates of OSA who have no titles. First up is Anti Pavkovic, an OSA associate who, like Jason Storms, was also present at the white supremacist insurrection on January 6th. We have Jeff Durbin, a pastor at Apologia Church, who has claimed that treating abortions as murder is a form of justice. There is Jake Eakin, an Operation Save America associate and convicted murderer turned anti-abortion activist. There's Dave Daubenmire, an OSA associate who has lamented the fact that he can't use the N-word, and who, while talking about the criminalization of abortion, claimed that George Tiller got what he deserves when he was murdered. If you'd like to learn more about Dave Daubenmire, Reproaction has both a baseball card, and he is featured in one of our Stop Prosecuting Abortion videos, which I highly encourage you all watch. And finally, we have Daniel Navejas, who is the founder of the Ecclesia of Oklahoma and has been present at multiple OSA conferences, appearing to do some of the social media outreach for Operation Save America. Next slide, please. To close, I want to touch a little on why we're concerned about Operation Save America and why we're hosting a whole webinar just on this one group. And the baseline is just that OSA's rhetoric has grown increasingly violent. This is especially true of Jason Storms, who, as I said earlier, stated that he has been on the streets with his AR-15 fully locked and loaded on the streets of Wisconsin more than once. This is more than a little concerning, as this kind of violence is not something people in the abortion access field are unfamiliar with. We're also concerned because they are starting to gain more political connections through groups such as Red State Reform. For example, they have ties to, as I stated earlier, State Rep Walt Blackman, State Rep John Jacobs, and State Senator Warren Hamilton, all of whom have openly accepted and promoted Operation Save America's goal of criminalizing abortion. They are also some of the people behind the Sanctuary Cities for the Unborn movement, which we've recently seen an example of in Lubbock, Texas. And so they are really starting to focus not just on state reps or state senators, but on city councils. Any state and local government official, Operation Save America has made a point of honing in on, and that is extremely concerning at a time when access to abortion is already somewhat tenuous in many states. Their reach is also starting to increase, and this may seem a little silly, but they're starting to learn to better utilize social media. Even just a couple of years ago, they didn't necessarily film all of their conferences. They didn't really encourage their followers to talk about their content. But they have started to more actively try to engage both more people and more young people, which is going to make them more of a presence on platforms where they previously didn't have much influence. And finally, this group is really only becoming more extreme, from their continued support of the criminalization of abortion to their clear disregard for COVID-19 safety concerns. Operation Save America has just continued to show us that big pro-life really is pro-violence. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Kara, thank you so much for that very powerful, not just overview, but deep dive into Operation Save America, and for doing it when you're feeling a little something in your throat as well. Thank you so much. So I want to encourage everyone, if you have questions for Kara, if feel free to put them in the questions tab and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. And with that, I am super pleased to introduce Kat Green, who is the Managing Director, Executive in Charge of Production, and Chief Mechanic of Abortion Access Front. She is currently leading Abortion Access Front's campaign to centralize and organize oppositional research on anti-abortion extremists from escorts in the field. Before joining Abortion Access Front, Kat worked as a producer, editor, and camera operator for film and television productions around the world. Somewhere in there, she's also designed databases for nonprofits and post departments and learned to drive a truck with air brakes. In her spare time, she designs and fabricates dangerous art and collects obscure skills. Kat, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so we're thrilled to have you here. So before I dive into the real questions, I'm inspired by Kara's presentation. What is your favorite scent of essential oil?
I don't have one. I don't even wear perfume.
All good. Well, I'm aware, if you did like them, I'd suggest shopping somewhere else. Okay, so we can dive in. So my first question for you is to please share the work of Abortion Access Front and in particular what Abortion Access Front has been doing around groups like Operation Save America.
Sure. So Abortion Access Front started as Lady Parts Justice and then Lady Parts Justice League. And initially we began as a information hub to put better information, entertaining information about abortion restrictions and bad actors into pop culture spaces. And so we were making videos and putting them on social media and then doing comedy tours around the country. And in the course of touring, we started having providers come and do a panel at the end of every show so that we could introduce the audience to what was happening in their local community. In the course of doing that, we started thinking about our own security concerns while touring because we were doing practical support of the clinics when we would go on the road. And we got to know a lot of escorts. And then also in speaking to the folks at NAF, they were like, well, if you're going to have providers on the stage, we actually need to completely approach security in a comedy show in a different way. So between talking to NAF and talking to escorts on the ground, we just sort of had a loose idea of who to watch out for in different cities we were going to, who was the most obtrusive at the clinics, who actually had violent pasts, and just who we needed to keep an eye out for. And over the years, I mean, we've been on the road, the C3 has been an organization for almost 6 years now. And but so we went on tour for about 4 years, and we just started collecting more and more information about different people who aren't the standard leadership of the anti-abortion organizations that you're used to seeing. A lot of the people who are the frontmen are a little bit more respectable, and so that should tell you something based on the presentation that just went up. But so all of the people who are actually doing strategy and combining these groups' efforts together started to become clear. And the people who saw that are the escorts who are in front all the time, seeing who's there, and then following people on social media because they wanted to get a heads up if something like a Red Rose Rescue or a blockade was being planned, or when a convention like Operation Save America's national event was coming to town because they knew they would get inundated with antis. So it really just started as a whisper network between escorts and then, sometimes with NAP weighing in about what was happening on the ground. And one night I'm sitting with a lawyer friend and I was like, we need to put this all in one place. And so I started building a database first, very no frills, just connecting the dots of what we knew about who and trying to make a family tree of what was happening so that we could approach things with a little bit more structure than just responding to something as it happened. So in
Oh, I'm sorry.
the last,
I realized I started talking and I was on mute. So
oh, okay.
I super apologize. So I will repeat what I said in my non-tech savvy way. So I want to say thank you for that. And in particular, I'm really excited about the connections between the work that you do at Abortion Access Front and with activists on the ground and clinic escorts on the ground. So just to dive a little deeper into that question, what kind of feedback have you been getting at Abortion Access Front about Operation Save America from activists on the ground, especially in states where there is only one abortion clinic left?
Well, OSA travels. So I feel like every clinic has a story of them coming to town, but especially anybody that has dealt with their regional events or the annual event, which gets the most people. Their numbers have gone down, but the rhetoric has gotten more aggressive in the last few years. And so we've been noticing that there's a lot more mobilization language. There's a lot more talking about people's duty to prepare for physical conflict, and a lot more posing with guns. But that's, the gun thing is almost secondary because a lot of the states that they're in are open carry states, so that's not out of the ordinary as much. But showing up at the clinics with guns is, that's happening more frequently. That I think it's been a while since that was happening. But it's really, we're also seeing groups start to intersect a little bit more. And that's the troubling thing to me, is that groups who historically did not get along are starting to collaborate. And I feel like that's something we should take a page from. Like historically, we've all kind of had our work siloed. And one of the things that I've been aiming for with this is getting all the people on the ground to just share information with each other, because then you see the patterns of, like, it's the same people doing this one kind of blockade and the same people doing the Red Rose rescues inside the clinics. And as the patterns emerge, we can plan a little bit better and maybe coordinate our efforts to find a different way to prosecute them.
So, Pat, just a follow-up question for our listeners who may not be as familiar. Please describe what they call a Red Rose rescue. What happens?
Well, the thing I want to separate first, though, is Red Rose rescues are not something that OSA normally does that at all, really. That's a different group. It's primarily a Catholic group that it's a whole different set of people. We're starting to see a couple people that do participate in OSA-related blockades show up for Red Rose rescues because they're trying to, they just want to be wherever the action is. They're people who are looking for a fight. So a Red Rose rescue, though, separately, is when somebody makes an appointment at a clinic and people come in for their appointment, and then sitting in the lobby, they hand out red roses to the people inside the clinic. OSA's MO is way more common to be a blockade. They show up with a large group of people. They're very loud in front of the clinic. They often have a shofar, and they chain themselves to the front door. They're the people screaming at you about fire and brimstone and with the giant fetus billboards. And they collaborate more frequently with Abolish Human Abortion, Apologia Church, the Ecclesia, all of these groups. Coach Dave was in the fold, has his own organization, was out of the fold, is now kind of back in. So it's interesting to see old feuds get resolved in the interest of working together.
Thank you for that. And just to underscore that for patients and people who are seeking reproductive health care, any type of barrier or shaming to getting the health care they need needs to go away. And so it is a spectrum of folks, such as someone going in the waiting room and trying to harass them and guilt them and stigmatize and shame them in there. Sometimes with those Red Rose rescues, they refuse to leave until they are arrested and make a big show out of it. To the logical conclusion of the movement that calls itself pro-life. People like Operation Save America, who are openly got key leaders openly urging people to carry semi-automatic weapons, and the presentation that Kara showed. So just to underscore that is something that's it's all horrible in how it's experienced by patients who are just trying to get the care that they need. So how do you see Operation Save America's continued escalation in activity impacting the communities you work with?
Well, you can see it in the sermons from people like Matt Truella, who is Jason Storms' father-in-law. And kind of the reason that Storms is getting that job, Truella is a fixture in OSA and has also been affiliated with the Army of God for a long time. He signed the Third Defensive Action Statement, like, what is it, 15, 20 years ago, which is a document that a bunch of anti-abortion activists all signed, saying that that it's reasonable to use homicide to stop abortion providers. So I think we're getting a lot of old Army of God rhetoric, which is really the most extreme anti-abortion group that has existed in the US, I'd say. A group that, puts clinic bombers on a pedestal and had a regularly recurring fundraiser every year to give them funding while they were in prison, anybody who had committed violence against an abortion provider. Really the most extreme violent people that have existed in this scene. And OSA is really returning to its roots. Truella was a fixture in Army of God. John Brockhoff is a convicted clinic bomber who's been a staple at OSA events for several years, again, since he got out of prison. And Jason Storms is echoing his father-in-law's sentiments, right? Like Truella wrote this book, The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates, and this is actually one of the things that we're seeing bring people together is they're leaning on this lesser magistrates text in terms of what's happening with COVID, right? The anti-mask stuff, the reopen the state stuff. They really want to push local government, and what they're really pushing to get more people into local government and try and take away any sort of federal oversight over state and even county rights. And a lot of this is also paired with preparing for battle, and that's the part that works.
Thank you for that. And I want to underscore that our purpose in hosting this webinar and sharing this information is that we want to make sure that everyone is fully empowered to know about the true nature of the anti-abortion movement, which is that it is violent, and that there is no reason to see this as merely another side to an issue, as if there was another side to the issue of someone's fundamental human right to control their body. But that we want people to know this information and really hold Big Pro-Life accountable for its tolerance of violence in its midst. And the purpose of this webinar is not to shame, or not shame is not the word, excuse me, is not to scare people away from accessing reproductive health care. And we want to assure you that, that people work very hard, reproductive health care providers, to give their patients a seamless experience and give them a compassionate care. But it is really important to know about these people. I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege just to share something that I've seen in some of my own interactions with Operation Save America, which hosts national events. They call them national events several times a year throughout the country. And this was one that I attended in particular in 2011 in Charlotte, North Carolina, where they were not just terrorizing all of the 3 abortion providers in town. They were terrorizing the entire community. So they were putting up these graphic, disgusting, photoshopped images over highway overpasses. They had these trucks driving around. It was dangerous for traffic. They were going to the convenience stores and the Walmarts and putting up these disgusting photos. And I remember one of the things that most touched me on that particular visit was that outside of so we were doing peaceful presence. We had been invited by the clinic to do so, and that's really important that people work directly with the clinics, because sometimes they don't want more people coming, but this particular one did, and so we created a peaceful presence to counter Operation Save America and the demonstrators that they were bringing in. And there was a woman who came up and pulled over and actually introduced herself, and she had started a petition to stop these demonstrations that Operation Save America was hosting. And she actually said that she wasn't pro-choice, but she was so frustrated from seeing these horrific posters and harassment. And she's explained that she had a small kid and she just wanted to be able to take her kid to the grocery store without her kid having to see that. So just to paint the picture some more about how they can really terrorize entire communities. And so I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about that, Kat. I'll give you a moment.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I would say that the visuals are, you know, disturbing to the people passing by, but the reality is too that when they're in town, they're following clinic workers, they're threatening them, they're distributing literature in their neighborhoods, they're harassing their children at school, and that is true stalking, right? Like, they are putting people at risk, they're harassing them, and they have openly said that it's justifiable to hurt them. And so the people who work at the clinic are living in terror, like real threat of violence terror that I don't think should be overlooked, because it's traumatic for the neighborhood that they wind up in to have these signs and to have everybody there. But like, the people providing healthcare are actually in danger, and that's my primary concern, is how do we stop them from being harassed all the time, you know?
Yeah, thank you for that. And that just conjures up another memory from that specific national event that I attended, that, you know, Flip Benham, the previous director prior to Rusty Thomas, was one of the pioneers of this practice of wanted posters. And what he would do is create these like Wild West style wanted posters featuring compassionate abortion care providers, and distributing them throughout town. I mean, that is, everybody knows what that is. That is incitement to violence. And there were restraining orders that were held against them. And I remember at one of these particular events, he was sending others, including Rusty, who then took over, out directly in front of the clinics. But because of his restraining order, I remember seeing him in this area a little ways away in the parking lot, still trying to direct the event. So it really is, thank you for closing that circle. It's really important, Kat, about how they are harassing providers and workers, and really it can be a physical danger.
Yeah, I mean, when we've been on tour, we've had people follow us, you know, like multiple occasions of people following our van, trying to see where we're staying, like that sort of thing. And it's a regularly recurring theme with them.
Yep, it's part of the intimidation. So the last piece that I want to touch on, and perhaps I'll start by referencing that our senior outreach producer, Ivania Woods, wrote a really fantastic piece that's up on our blog, highlighting the fact that the anti-abortion movement is interconnected with the movement for white supremacy in this country, and that fundamentally it is anti-democracy. And I know, Kat, that you have some thoughts about that as well, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. What are some trends or views that you have noticed in that overlap of the anti-abortion movement and the broader white supremacist movement that you think are gaining traction?
Well, that's the scary part about this, is after the Capitol, well, really last year during the anti-mask rallies throughout the country, we started seeing well-known people from OSA show up at these state rallies and hobnobbing with known militia groups, right? Clearly familiar with them, clearly comfortable with them. and starting to work with them at these rallies. And so everybody in Repro had a good idea of what was going to happen around the 6th, right? Nobody thought it was going to be as bad as it was. Well, maybe, but in any case, everybody was watching on the 6th because we knew something was going to happen. So it wasn't a big surprise when between everybody, there were, 30 people identified that were there on site in DC at the Capitol. And saying things like, we're having a revolution, you know, we're really starting to see them align with different militia groups, many of whom have extreme white supremacist ideologies. And now, in a way, it's helping us because they're showing their whole ass on the internet. Excuse me. You know, they're aligning themselves with these militia groups. They're, in some cases, training their own militia groups, and they're starting to openly speak out about things like critical race theory. You know, a lot of times, especially the abolitionist movement, really likes to hide behind a false hero factor of trying to hide behind the word abolition and really saying that what they're doing is standing up for people of color. And with all of the new news about critical race theory, a lot of them are starting to come out vehemently opposed to anything that would challenge their image of what America is supposed to be taught to their children as, even though most of their children are homeschooled, you know. But it's really helping to connect the dots, you know. Also, during the George Floyd protests, the people who came out against those and the people who were patrolling the streets, like Jason Storms in Kenosha after Kyle Rittenhouse, they're just showing up and showing what they actually stand for. You know, Matt Shea is another great example of somebody who has really been pushing to make Eastern Washington a white ethno state again, and he's showing up at, you know, just shy of straight up Nazi rallies in Idaho to talk about this stuff. And Matt Shea is a former state representative in Washington who has spoken at OSA national events several times, has been part of Ken Peters' Patriot Church, which it was Covenant in Seattle, but they've all been part of the Church of Planned Parenthood, which is this new trend of having a church service outside of the clinic. So hundreds of people show up for church service, and their argument is that they can't break it up because, much like blocking the entrance to a clinic, the FACE Act also protects any sort of religious services. So, you know, connected to TCAP, Jake Eakin, who is a known child murderer, right? Like actually killed a kid when he was a teenager. Not in some drunk driving accident, like straight up murder. He is a well-known connection between TCAP and OSA. He was in Washington, now he moved to Charlotte, and I think now he's in West Virginia. But we're just seeing all these people who are aggressive, have known histories of violence, move around and coordinate other groups and sort of take them under their wing and train them. And it's really troubling.
It's absolutely terrifying. And I want to underscore for our listeners that at its core, the anti-abortion movement is a white supremacy movement. And that is what we are fighting up against with this, that this is a fight for them that is about, bluntly, they want more white babies in this country, and they will sometimes use claim that they are promoting the lives of Black babies and babies of color, but they do not. They turn a complete blind eye to the disproportionate impact of lack of access to reproductive health care for people of color and maternal mortality rates for Black women in particular that it's really important to understand that this is a white supremacy movement. And there are groups like Operation Save America. When you look at the back of some of the red t-shirts that they wear, where it says like, you know, that it's
The truth sounds like hate.
right, direct like anti-Islam statements right up against feminism is rebellion and anti-LGBTQ hate. That they're very open and they wear that stuff on their sleeves, but regardless of whether everyone in the movement is wearing that on their sleeves, that is what we're up against, and we are fighting for a just future. So, Kat, I want to thank you so much. I've learned a ton in this time with you today, and I'm sure there's more that people would like to learn from you. So please put those in the questions tab, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. Questions for Kat or questions for Kara. Thank you again, Kat.
Thank you.
So I will pass it to Kara.
Thank you. Okay. So we'd like to ask you to plug into a couple current Reproaction campaigns specifically related to this webinar. In a moment, I will post the link in the chat, but we are asking you to sign our petition asking the Best Western to stop catering to violent pro-life extremists by giving discounts and deals to groups like Operation Save America. That petition is live on our website, and I am posting it in the chat now, so please sign. I'd also like to ask you to follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Reproaction.
Thank you, Kara. And then, so we host these webinars every single month, these Act and Learn webinars. They are free, they are open to the public. If you sign up for our email list at reproaction.org, you won't miss a single invitation. We never want to disinvite you. So next month's topic, we're super excited. We're gonna do it a little bit differently. We're gonna co-present with our friends at Digital Defense Fund, and it'll be on Friday, July 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And the topic is periods, pregnancy, abortion, and your digital security. So we'll talk about everything from is it safe to have a period tracker to what if you're looking about information about abortion online, how is that safe, and other important topics. So really, really important content, and we look forward to having you join us again next month. And with that, I'm going to bring it over to Q&A. And first, I will read a comment where this pertains earlier to the presentation that Kara was making about some of the state level legislators who are really openly embracing some of this stuff. And Annette says that they would add Senator Cash from Anderson, South Carolina to the list. He and a few others are behind anti-choice legislation, and Senator Cash brags about being arrested because he believes in Operation Rescue. And I think this is something that, again, is really important to underscore. There are many, and Kat touched on this as well, that many of the figureheads in the big pro-life movement like to pretend that this stuff has nothing to do with them, and that the violence and the violent rhetoric and this type of, frankly, terrifying behavior is on the margins of their movement. It is at the core of their movement, and some of the elected officials are openly part of it as well. So it's a really important point. So I don't see any questions yet, so I'm going to follow up with Kara a little bit. So Kara, thank you so much for sharing out that petition about the Best Western issue. If you could share more, you said that they're catering to anti-abortion extremists. What exactly is Best Western doing to roll out the welcome mat to Operation Save America?
Excellent question. Thank you. So the Best Western, and specifically the Best Western Plus in Mesa, Arizona, has previously hosted Operation Save America and specifically reserved rooms and given them discounts for these rooms in order for them to go and spread their violent anti-abortion extremist rhetoric out in the Mesa area. And they are planning to do so again for their June conference. The discounts are already posted. And we're asking them to really consider if this is what they as a chain want to be promoting, if this is what they as a company want to be putting out into their communities, if this is what they as an organization want to have associated with their brand. And we hope and we pray that the answer is no, that Best Western does not want violent anti-abortion hate associated with their brand.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and as somebody who's stayed in Best Westerns a number of times, I just am completely appalled and alarmed. And I really hope that Ron Pohl, the senior vice president of Best Western, responds in kind to our petition. And thank you to everyone who signed that petition already. Please do so if you haven't yet. So next up, I have a question for Kat, and this comes from Christine. The question is, what role do on-the-ground clinics and escorts play in gathering information?
Oh, that's great, actually, because really escorts are the first line of eyes and ears for everything. They can identify anybody in their area for the most part. They know who's on the ground. They're watching social pretty regularly to see what people are up to. They know who's friends with who. And so that is primarily the information that I've been collating, right? I do some of my own research, but mostly I'm talking to our friends on the ground who see this all the time. And I really think it's an important thing because escorts should be paid. They're basically volunteer security. And they're the first line of defense for everything that happens. And in COVID, what we saw was, it was great that the clinics largely included their escorts in terms of getting vaccinated up front because they knew that they were interacting with patients and everything. But like, these are people who have to have other jobs. And this has become a full-time job for them as well, especially clinics on the ground, like, where there's only one clinic left in a state, like the Jackson folks. That's a full-time job. Now they're also trying to do messaging and like preparing and press stuff for the Supreme Court, right? So this is a full-time job that they're not getting paid for. And then they have to support themselves on top of that. And they're constantly putting themselves at risk, facing off with these people who generally know where they live, know their kids' names, and they just let it roll off them. And so one of the biggest things that's come to me out of all of this is I think people need to find a way to pay clinic escorts.
Love it. Thank you for that, Kat. And I'm just remembering Kara had earlier referenced one of the Stop Prosecuting Abortion videos that we did where people attending an Operation Save America harassment event outside an abortion provider in Milwaukee told actually me on camera while I was talking to them. It was quite a conversation that they thought that women who have abortions should be executed and that doctors should be executed. And at that event, we were speaking with the regular clinic escort and they knew everything that was going on. And they were such experts in making sure that people were able to access the care they need with as little disruption as possible from the people spewing hate and targeting them outside. So thank you for that. I'm going to pass this. I'll start with Kara and then Kat, if you have anything additional you'd like to add. Here's a question is, do you think that they could possibly combine forces with other groups to promote open carry laws? Do you think they could do that? Have you seen any evidence of that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I actually don't think that they would, in part because their belief system involves like bypassing certain like laws they think are unjust or ridiculous. So like their whole thing with introducing bills that ban all abortions and criminalize them is that they think that the Supreme Court doesn't have the authority to make these kinds of rules and that these kinds of laws are tyrannical, so they don't have to listen to them. So I actually think they aren't likely to partner with those kinds of groups and to instead just carry weapons regardless of what the legislation says.
Thank you, Kat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, please.
Sorry. They're largely based in states that already have open carry laws, so it's not necessary. You know, part of where they decided to set up home bases was about places that already lean toward what they consider to be their essential freedoms. So I think it's a non-issue for them because they're already there.
Thank you for that. Okay, so next question, and I'll just do this as the open style popcorn. Have there been any strong connections between OSA and prominent hate groups, or I would phrase the question, other prominent hate groups, like the Proud Boys?
Bevelyn Beatty had the Proud Boys as her personal bodyguards in DC. I want to say it was in January and maybe also in February when she had some sort of stabbing incident there. And so she's a well-known anti who has been, she's not specifically OSA, but shows up to a lot of their events. She was in Milwaukee 2 years ago. Yeah, she works with Flip Benham all the time. He's based in Charlotte. So yeah, there have been. There's also Matt Torella is, I believe, part of the Oath Keepers. And there's definitely been some 3%ers involved, but I don't know off the top of my head who it is.
Thank you. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, so, and this is just a comment from Valerie saying this is great, very informative presentations, but a sad statement of our times. And the person made a comment that unfortunately the reason why so many people of a certain political persuasion have not been interested in supporting the January 6th Commission to investigate the attack on the Capitol is because it would come out that they are part of the anti-abortion, racist, homophobic, white supremacist movement in this country, and they want to keep that part of their lives under wraps while simultaneously passing legislation against abortions in their home states. Thank you for your comment, Valerie, and I'm not seeing any other questions. So I will close up this webinar. I want to thank Kara and Kat. This has been a spectacular and really informative discussion. And again, get on that petition that Kara shared out. We've got to get Best Western. There's no reason a hotel chain that people depend on as a place to go feel comfortable and get the rest that they need should be catering to these extremists. Oh, I'm seeing a couple of questions come in, and we do have 2 minutes, so I want to help. Make sure that we got, Talia says that they worked at a clinic. I'm not going to identify the state for security purposes as security, reception, and monitored a number of these folks. How can Talia get info to you for your database?
Oh, that's great. You can email me directly at kat@aafront.org.
Thank you. Thank you. And then someone else is making a statement about progressive groups not talking enough about attacks on abortion. And with that, I'm going to say, I guarantee you everyone on the line is furious about that and sees the problem. And we hope you will take action with us. So please do sign up for our email alerts at reproaction.org for much more on that. Kat and Kara, thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.
Oh, thanks. Could I just say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. If anybody wants to learn more about OSA, we have a whole website dedicated to exposing things that they've been up to and their actual events. It's osaunmasked.com, or you can go to operationsaveamerica.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kat. All right,
Thank you.
everyone, have a great day.